Hello, my name is Andrea Wirt. I'm a nurse practitioner in the geriatric division of the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. I work with elderly patients and their caregivers. My talk today is on caregiver stress in chronic disease. I'm going to define chronic disease as any disease which is progressive over time, seems to have some ups and downs, but definitely a decline over time. And can, of course, the care of that individual will require be extensive and can cause a lot of stress. And examples would be Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, diabetes, congestive heart failure, Parkinson's disease. So before I get into defining caregiver stress and how to deal with that, I'd like to just give you a visual to remember as we go through this talk. So here I have a bottle of water, and so I'd like you all just to look at this and try to tell me how heavy it is. Don't get too worried about specifics, but just give me an idea. How heavy do you think this bottle of water is? Well, basically, it's a little bit of a trick question. It depends on how long I'm holding it. Right now, it's not that heavy for me to hold, but if you come back and ask me, in 4 hours of holding this bottle, it will have become quite heavy. Now, if I were to put the bottle down and give my arm a rest, and then a few minutes, pick it up again, I could carry it then a little bit, or hold it then a little bit longer. So remember that visual as we talk about stress today. Caregiver stress can be defined actually by Webster's as a suffering of mind or body, severe physical or mental strain. Actually, Al Seibert in The Survivor Personality identifies that there's no real stress until you feel a strain. And I'm sure all of you identify individuals that you know, family members, friends, who seem to really not have any strain, however you feel that they have a lot of stress. So stress is very subjective, it's unique to each individual, and it's very difficult to define objectively. It's difficult to actually quantify. As I said, individuals deal with stress differently, even present with stress differently. Definitely a difference between men versus women. Men tend to internalize quite a bit, maybe not express when they are under stress. Women might be a little more vocal. Culturally and in between races, we can see some differences as well, and even educational levels of how to deal with stress can be different. We do see, though, that there are some warning signs of stress and strain. These are some that I'm sure all of y'all can identify with, or if not, you're doing quite well with your stress. But here are some. We can see that we have actually a loss of energy, being exhausted much of the time, feeling out of control, feeling tense or nervous, having a lack of interest in the things that you liked to do in the past, becoming isolated, not going out doing things that you had in the past, having increasing health issues. Actually, studies have shown that caregivers, both former caregivers and current caregivers, have a decrease in their immune system. So we really need to identify if there's an increased health issue going on. Sleep problems, appetite changes, some problems with memory, some irritability. And then these last two that I have listed, the abuse or neglect of the care receiver and even thoughts of suicide can be present if this stress and strain is ongoing and is really not addressed. So as a caregiver, we want to identify when this occurs and take care of it before we get to this point. There is a positive correlation between workload demands and an increased psychological distress. We see studies have shown that caregivers, the more stress that they are under, they have increased anxiety, depression, and fatigue. And as I mentioned, it can even affect their health and decrease their immune system. There are also, we need to identify the source of caregiver stress. First, in order to treat the stress or deal with the stress of how are we going to take care of it, we need to identify what is causing it. So first of all, we want to see if there's too many demands. Demands on that caregiver's time, energy, or even money. Time being, does it require a lot of physical time to assist the person? The actual physical energy, strength in order to help someone move from one position to another, get bathed, that sort of thing. And then finances, money involved as far as for equipment, resources, assistance in the home. We also can have stress related to conflicting responsibilities. Responsibilities would be something as in your responsibilities as an employee, with your family members, as a spouse, as your nuclear family if you're caring for a parent. So that can cause a lot of stress. Differing expectations of those individuals. You might feel that your focus needs to be on the person who you're providing stress for, and those individuals believe otherwise. As far as a boss, being there at work routinely and not leaving or being off. And then friends, still being involved in the activities that friends are involved in. Others might not understand how compromised the care receiver is, and that's very stressful, as you would then seem like you must justify as a caregiver why you're providing and how much time you are spending in providing that care. So it can also be identified as a stress. You also, as a caregiver, might feel difficulty in meeting the care receiver's need, both mentally or physically. Mentally would be dealing with possibly the behaviors or maybe the moods involved in having a chronic disease. And then the physical needs, as I mentioned before, if a spouse who's elderly is a caregiver, they have their own limitations in being able to assist physically. That's going to be a stress on them. There's also the pressure of finances or lack of resources that can be quite stressful. Not having enough money to pay for supplies, medications, hiring someone to assist as a caregiver. And then the loss of freedom, especially if your loved one that you're caring for is at home and requires 24-hour supervision or constant assistance. Then you feel trapped in not being able to leave the house. There can be disagreement between family members. Other family members may not feel that you as the caregiver are providing care adequately, or are doing things that they feel are not optimal, and so that would be also a stressful situation. And then there could be family members that are not necessarily involved in care. As a caregiver, you feel that they should be involved in the care, and that again provides or is a stressful situation. The care receiver themselves might also expect too much of you as the caregiver, and again, there can be that stress between you as the caregiver and the care receiver trying to balance that. Family members can be quite negative as well, or could be, and that would be stressful. Negative in, again, as I mentioned before, not wanting to help or not believing that the care provided is optimal. And then the actual decline that does occur with chronic disease can be very painful to watch over time. And this again provides another source of stress. So how do we deal with all of this stress? So we have some coping strategies here. First would be the education of the disease process and the related behaviors. Secondly, joining a support group. Third, to conduct a practical family assessment. And fourth, to develop a plan. And then fifth, to practice positive stress reduction techniques. I'm going to talk about each one of these.